How can you roleplay when you can't? Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy, and today we look at the issue of how can you roleplay when you can't actually roleplay. What the hell do I mean by that? Well, I mean, let's say, for example, when you're sitting in the office and you've got all of those things you have to do and you really just don't want to and you want to roleplay. But unfortunately, there's no GM running around, there's no players running around, there's all that kind of stuff. Or perhaps you have decided that the group that you were role-playing with are a bunch of individuals who have a very different approach to role-playing to yourself, and you want to find your own group, but you don't have anyone else in your village or your town, and somehow or other you don't want to use webcams and things. How can you role-play? Well, there are a few options available to us. Some of them go back all the way to the very beginnings of the internet. I was there. I remember when. As a matter of fact, that very first experience I'll tell you about later on in the video if you remind me. So let's have a look at the 5 different ways you can roleplay when you can't. This video is sponsored by World Anvil, who have one of the methods on how to roleplay, and we'll discuss that later on. It's built into their actual software, so not only can you create an amazing world within all of their pages and make maps and link stuff and do all kinds of cool and wonderful things, you can now also roleplay when you can't necessarily roleplay, or when all of your players are asleep, you can still roleplay. It's amazing. You can do it on World Anvil. Go check them out. Use the code GREATGM for an amazing discount to pick up those Xmas gifts which you know you probably should be giving to yourself. The first way in which you can roleplay when you can't is a very old-fashioned technique which started by letters. Yes, folks, remember good old-fashioned letters? Those things that you wrote on and then put it in an envelope and then gave to a postman who'd cheerily go on their way and, you know, then get stabbed by the mafiosa because they're actually secretly couriering drugs to all of the different story, different times, fun times. Now, moving on, playing by post evolved in the early 80s and early 90s and so on into play by email, or PBEMs, which I first started playing way back when. He has that funny story, which isn't particularly. I used to play PBMs. I was an absolute avid player. I had my regular group of players, that's for absolutely sure, and we used to play around the table, but I wanted more, and I wanted to roleplay outside of just Dungeons and Dragons, and so I used to play by email. And in those days, I did not have a computer or internet for that matter. So a very good friend of mine who did have internet and a computer would download the emails that had all of the role-playing information in them and then bring them to me in school. I would then take them to the school computer and crack on open that, I think it was an amber-colored display in those days, read the emails and then type my response and then give that stiffy disk with my response to my friend, who would then go home and the next day post them out onto the interwebs, and all would be fine and dandy. Now, play by post has evolved from the play by email, where you're now playing on message boards and discussion boards and the like, and that's what World Anvil has now integrated into themselves as a discussion board. And what that does is, effectively, you create your character as you normally would, and then you enter into the game space where you then type out what your character does. A GM, sometimes it's GM, sometimes it's self-regulated. A GM would then adjudicate and respond back with a post as to the outcomes of your actions. Now, you can't write for your fellow characters, but you are writing for yourself, and you are responding to what they are writing and picking up on threads, and occasionally you actually collaborate and do a joint post where your characters are integrated into a single post to create a more lively discussion. Now, this is obviously very much focused for people who like to type and who are good at writing, not necessarily good at writing, but who enjoy writing enough to want to be able to engage in these things. Because a lot of these play-by-post have requirements that you post every day or every third day, or that you write at least 150,000 words per entry. I'm joking, no one would ever ask you that because that's the length of a book. But nonetheless, you get the idea. They have rules and restrictions, and of course their own nomenclature as to how you list whether you're thinking a thought or speaking a thought or doing an action. Some of them are quite specific and some are very free form and allow you to just write. So play by post, play by email is I think an easy one to do because it doesn't require a specific time commitment from each of the players. You don't have to get together at the same time. You can post at midnight and they can post 3 hours later and so on, and the game kind of rumbles forward. It is obviously a slower game, but it allows you to get more in depth as it is a literary game rather than a verbal game. And so there is a definite benefit to that. Another one which I have done on occasion is specifically designed for when you are stuck in traffic. So if you are a commuter by train, this probably won't work for you, but if you are in traffic, you can role play with yourself. Yes, I know it sounds strange, but every vehicle that you pass or that passes you, you can ascribe their license plate to a specific outcome, a success or a failure. You could say that if the license plate contains more even numbers than odd numbers, whatever you were trying to do succeeds. If it contains more odd numbers, it fails. If it contains more of the first 13 letters of the alphabet, then it's a extraordinary success. If it's the last 13, then it's a rather dismal outcome. So you might succeed and have a poor outcome, kind of drawing from the Fantasy Grounds Fantasy Flight system that they used to use. So this means that whilst you're driving, you can tell yourself a happy little story. You are GM and player, but the outcomes are completely determined by the vehicles that pass you. This requires you, instead of actually trying to have good statistics, because that would be irrelevant, it requires you to now start thinking outside of the box in terms of, well, my character tries to climb a cliff. Oh great, a car has just passed me that says that my character failed dismally. So the character falls from the cliff, breaks a leg, and now must drag themselves to find some kind of help. What this is doing is all it's doing, I should say, is it's helping you to mentally tell better stories and form those kind of connections, build those random things together. It really does work in terms of helping you to create stuff up and come up with stuff on the fly. And words today speak I not, for know them I do, but word mouth salad, don't know what's going on. Bear with me, folks. Now, another way of role-playing when you can't, and this is one that I have done for years, it's really useful if you are at a convention or at a restaurant, or if you are waiting in line whilst shopping or doing something, or however, as long as you have people walking past you, and if you've watched this channel, you'll know that I do this and advocate this a lot. As somebody walks past you, look at their watch, look at their shoes, and then look at their hair. And try and determine what kind of occupation they have, what their day has been like thus far, and then take it a step further and look at the next person who walks behind them, do the same thing, but then work out why the person behind them is going to murder them, and how they're going to do it, and why they're going to do it. So you might look at the first person and say, well, scruffy shoes look very old. So that indicates that either they don't like buying clothes or they don't have money to buy new clothes. You look at the watch that they're wearing. Oh, they don't have a watch because it's the 21st century. So then they're relying on their cell phone. So try and get a view of their cell phone. If it's old and cracked, that corroborates your story of the lack of money to replace things, as we know that cell phones tend to kind of indicate a person's position financially. And then you look at their hair, and if their hair is unkempt, then it means that this person quite possibly is either a modern day hipster and just likes the look, or doesn't have a huge amount of resources and funds, possibly because of an attitude that they don't need to really put in much effort to succeed. I mean, that's a lot of supposition and me just imposing a whole bunch of negative stereotypes onto this person, but I'm trying to create a story. So the person who's then following them, let's say, for example, they're wearing sneakers. Sneakers are very practical, but they're not particularly office-like, at least not by most general standards. So sneakers are good for someone who wants to run. Well, an assassin would probably need to wear sneakers as opposed to slick Armanis, which don't have a lot of grip, generally speaking. You then look at the person's watch, and they do have a watch. Aha, this is because at night they don't necessarily want to turn their phone on and emblazon their face, causing their night vision to lose. They want to be able to look at their watch, which has got the little neon strips in it so it faintly glows so they can see the time of the assassination perfectly. And if you look at their hair, and their hair is short cropped, it means they know that they might get into a fight, and having short cropped hair allows them to obviously not be gripped on the head by long hair, which is what long hair allows you to do. And so that's why they're an assassin. And why are they going to kill this particular person? This particular person got fired 6 months ago, so they don't have any money, but they have the access code to the super laser, which they used to work on as a programmer, but which now they don't work on. And so the assassin has been sent to do that. That's a whole role-playing game all on its own, and you can link in multiple people, and then you can look at somebody else and figure out why they're going to try and save this hacker from the assassin. You can look at somebody else and go, well, that's the actual hero of the story who's trying to find the assassin, and they don't know what the assassin. You can go mad. It is role-playing within your head, but you're using other people and using real-world information that you have and that you can make up to create these things. It's just a really, really powerful way of doing it. Another way of doing things, which can work for those of you who like to role play, but have friends who like to play board games. I do this, and some players find it a little bit irritating, so warning, but a lot of other players find it a lot of fun. I like to play board games, and I like to play board games and embody the character that I am playing, and that's why when I play something like Monopoly, for example, which I haven't played in a very long time, I come up with a whole persona of who this property tycoon person is and why they're buying up all the property and what their whole hopes and goals, and I apply my OGAS to the whole thing. It doesn't really matter what board game you're playing. There is always an opportunity to insert a character and then to try and play the game as that character. I am not advocating for a moment that you create an idiot who is going to try and disrupt that board game or who is going to try and purposefully lose that board game. That is not what I'm advocating. However, I am advocating that if you want to create a goblin who thinks he's super sneaky and is going to manipulate the game so that he wins using his little goblin tactics, which I determine might be maybe more pack-like a tactic, so I'll try and look for options within the game that give me pack. They might try and collect all the shinies rather than food or wood if it's a resource gathering game. You apply this persona to yourself as you're playing the board game. Again, the bottom line is you must still play the board game to the best of your ability, but you're now going to mask it in the OGAS of the character that you are personifying. And you need to do that, because otherwise people will not invite you to come back and play board games. They'll say, no. Well, who's coming to play? Is it the goblin? Is it the ogre? Is it the mad mage? Is it the backstabbing succubus? Who's coming to play? Because if it's either of those, we don't want them, because they always lose, because they always just try and eat the board. That's not what I'm advocating. Try to adopt a different persona to yourself. It will help you in terms of developing your speech style, your mannerisms, your way of thinking, and something like that. Now, the final option, which I want to talk to you about very quickly, this was actually suggested to me by someone on Discord, I believe it was, within our group. That's discord.gg/greatgm. And this was turn your day-to-day activities into adventures and assign yourself experience points at the end of each adventure that you successfully complete. So, for example, in my case, recording this video is a challenge. It's an adventure. Now, my enemies, the encounters that I have, will be the technology. The technology will fight back, and I will have to make sure that the audio is clear and that the video is clear and that the background looks okay. Have I done all of that? Yes, I have vanquished the technology demon. Ha! I've destroyed it. The next one will be, have I actually recorded the video and then edited the video? In other words, I'm turning it into an adventure. The adventure of a YouTuber recording a video. And at the end of it, I might go, you know what? That was pretty good. I'm going to give myself 50 experience points. I am going to say that I've got 50 experience points in recording these videos. Great. Fantastic. Let's move on to the next adventure that I'm going to have today, which is recording another video. And then after that, we will then do the journey of the character who has to write a chapter in their latest Kickstarter book or whatever. You turn everything into adventures, and by the end of the day, you sit back and you say, okay, well, I did that adventure, that adventure, that adventure, and that adventure, and that gets me 50 experience points per adventure or 100 experience points per adventure. Work out what system you like to use, and then at the end of the day, you work out how much experience points you've gathered. It's pretty cool, and I do like the idea of thinking out the box in terms of how do you turn your day-to-day activities into Something that could generate an adventure. What is the coffee demon? I know what the coffee demon is. The coffee demon is the thing that drinks all of my coffee. And yes, I'm not ashamed to say I have a second backup cup because the first cup will run out. I know this. So I am a prepared adventurer. That coffee demon, you drank the sample which was filled with poison and the real coffee is still fine. Booyakasha. Thank you for playing. This player wins. Yeah. Okay. Look, you can do this internally inside your own head. Your other co-workers do not have to know what's going on, although you can turn them into NPCs like, the merchant. Hail, merchant! I require 3 of your finest pens and a pack of staples. And yes, I brought back the 3 used pens, and I brought back an empty stapler to prove that I'm not stealing the paper and stationery supplies. Thank you very much. So yes, all right, good. So those are the 5 ways that you can roleplay when you can't. I know there are many more out there. That's what you need to do for me. Log them down below so that we can get an idea of what else we can do to prove to the world that we are completely and utterly creative geniuses who run amazing role-playing games because we practice and we work out our imaginations in all of the aspects of our lives, and we have fun whilst doing it, so judge me not, for I have earned 500 experience points today, which translates into a slice of cake or something. Anyway, big thank you to you for watching all the way through to the end. I really appreciate that. A massive thank you to all of the Patreons whose names scroll. I can never remember which side it is, but they're scrolling on the sides. These wonderful, wonderful, amazing people keep this channel alive. And in final thought, big thank you to World Anvil for sponsoring today's video. Go and check out their discussion boards. Super cool. Remember that code GREATGM to get a discount on subscriptions to their services. And that's it from me. To you, I wish you the very happiest of gaming. Score 25 XP for watching the video and going on the adventure.